There is a special kind of heartbreak that does not begin with betrayal, shouting, or obvious rejection. It begins in the most confusing moment of all, when everything seems to be going beautifully. The conversations become deeper, the silences become warmer, the looks last longer. You feel that the distance between the souls is finally melting. And then suddenly, without warning, they pull away. They stop replying the way they used to. They become colder, drier, harder to reach. Sometimes they erase the messages, pretend nothing happened, or vanish altogether as if the tenderness between you never existed. And that is what makes it so devastating. They do not disappear when there is no love. They disappear exactly when love starts to become real. Not everyone is afraid of loneliness. Some people are far more afraid of intimacy. They can survive empty nights, but they panic when someone begins to see them too clearly. For certain zodiac signs, real closeness feels dangerously beautiful. It awakens old pain they thought they had buried. It reminds them of childhood homes where love meant suffering, sacrifice, control, or abandonment. It touches wounds left by former lovers who promised forever and delivered silence. It exposes their lack of experience, their fear of not knowing how to stay, how to trust, how to be soft without being destroyed. Some are terrified of losing freedom. Others are terrified of being left first. So they do the leaving themselves. These signs do not always run because they do not care. Very often, they run because they care too much. The more they feel, the more unstable they become inside. When affection turns into attachment, and attachment threatens to become love, an invisible alarm goes off in their soul. Suddenly they are cold. Suddenly they are busy. Suddenly they need space, distance, silence, air. You may think you imagine everything, but you did not. The feelings were real. The fear was just stronger. Today, we are opening the hidden doors of the zodiac and exposing the 6 signs most likely to vanish when the relationship becomes the warmest. These are the people who may crave love with all their heart and still sabotage it the moment it comes close enough to change their life. 1. Aquarius. Aquarius often disappears not because they feel nothing, but because they suddenly feel too much. This is one of the zodiac signs most misunderstood in love. On the outside, Aquarius can seem calm, witty, detached, even slightly untouchable. They know how to flirt through ideas, through unusual conversations, through a magnetic sense of difference. They draw people in with mystery. But the moment the relationship stops being a game of minds and starts becoming a meeting of hearts, Aquarius begins to panic in silence. They are terrified of emotional invasion. Aquarius needs to feel that their inner world still belongs to them, and when love starts becoming warm, close, and deeply personal, they may interpret that tenderness as a threat to their freedom. Not because you are controlling them, but because intimacy itself makes them feel exposed. This sign often grew up in an environment where emotions were either dismissed, intellectualized, or made to feel unsafe. They may have watched parents who stayed together but were emotionally frozen, or parents whose love turned into pain, betrayal, or suffocating dependence. Somewhere deep inside, Aquarius learned that once feelings become intense, life becomes unpredictable. That is why they sometimes do the cruelest things at the softest moment. They delete the correspondence because rereading it makes their feelings too real. They respond with coldness because warmth makes them vulnerable. They disappear because staying would mean admitting that this connection matters. 2. Sagittarius. Sagittarius can be passionate, bright, fearless, wild, and unbelievably alive in the beginning of a relationship. They know how to create momentum. They make you laugh, make you feel chosen, make life feel bigger. With Sagittarius, love often begins like fire, spontaneous, exciting, full of possibility. But sometimes, just when that fire starts to turn into something steadier, warmer, and more intimate, Sagittarius backs away so suddenly that it leaves the other person stunned. Why? Because for Sagittarius, real feelings can feel dangerously close to losing freedom. This sign does not fear love itself, they fear what love might demand from them. They fear being boxed in, emotionally monitored, expected to become someone they are not. Even when no one is restricting them, Sagittarius may begin to imagine future obligations, emotional heaviness, sacrifices, and invisible chains. The closer they get, the more they start hearing the inner voice that asks, what if I lose myself? What if I cannot leave later? What if this beautiful thing becomes a cage? Very often, this fear is older than the current relationship. Sagittarius may come from a childhood where love and suffering were tangled together. They may have watched one parent give up dreams, joy, or identity for the sake of a relationship. They may have grown up around constant conflict, betrayal, or emotional drama that taught them one dangerous lesson: closeness steals freedom. Even if they do not consciously remember it that way, the imprint stays in the nervous system. So when love becomes serious, Sagittarius may instinctively run before history can repeat itself. Sagittarius must learn that love is not automatically a loss of freedom. The right relationship does not clip their wings, it gives their soul somewhere safe to land. But until they understand that, they may keep disappearing right when the connection becomes warmest, leaving behind people who never realized that behind all that confidence was someone deeply afraid of being emotionally captured. 3. Virgo. Virgo is one of the zodiac signs most likely to become cold, silent, and distant at the exact moment they start caring too much. Their fear of intimacy rarely looks dramatic from the outside. Virgo does not usually run in chaos. They run in quiet ways. They answer less. They become overly logical. They suddenly focus on work, obligations, practical problems, minor details. They create emotional distance so carefully that sometimes you do not even notice it at first. But the truth is, when a relationship becomes deeply tender, Virgo often feels overwhelmed by the pressure of what love awakens in them. Virgo is terrified of emotional imperfection. This sign wants to do everything correctly, including love. But real intimacy cannot be controlled, edited, or organized. It is messy. It reveals insecurities. It demands vulnerability. And for Virgo, vulnerability feels dangerously close to failure. They are often people who grew up under criticism, high expectations, or emotionally inconsistent care. In childhood, they may have learned that being loved meant being useful, flawless, calm, mature, or not too much. As adults, they carry this wound into relationships. They want love desperately, but once they start feeling it, they begin to fear that the real them will disappoint someone. That is why Virgo may delete a correspondence after rereading it 20 times. They analyze every phrase, every silence, every emoji, every shift in tone until the warmth becomes unbearable. They do not just feel love, they dissect it. And when they cannot predict where it is going, anxiety takes over. Instead of saying, "I am scared," Virgo may become colder. Instead of admitting, "This matters to me," they may start acting busy, withdrawn, or irritated. Pulling back gives them the illusion of control. Previous painful relationships can make this even worse. Virgo remembers details other people forget. They remember the moment they were not chosen, the message that changed everything, the exact sentence that made them feel foolish for loving too openly. If they once gave loyalty, effort, and emotional labor to someone who did not value it, they may now be deeply suspicious of happiness. When the relationship begins to feel truly warm, part of Virgo starts waiting for the disappointment. And rather than stand there and watch love collapse on them again, they step away first. 4. Gemini. Gemini is often accused of being inconsistent in love, but the deeper truth is far more complicated. Gemini does not always disappear because they are shallow. Quite often, they disappear because their feelings have become too real to joke away, too deep to keep floating above, too powerful to be managed with charm and conversation. In the beginning, Gemini can be dazzling. They know how to pull you in with wit, playfulness, curiosity, long late-night messages, sudden confessions, and the feeling that with them, everything is alive. They make emotional closeness feel effortless until the moment it stops being light and starts becoming serious. That is when the inner split begins. Gemini is ruled by duality, and nowhere is that more obvious than in love. One part of them wants intimacy, closeness, emotional fusion, and the thrill of being truly known. The other part panics the second they feel trapped inside something they cannot intellectually control. When love becomes warm, steady, and deeply attached, Gemini may suddenly start questioning everything. Is this too much? Is this too serious? What if I lose my freedom? What if I cannot be the person they think I am? Those thoughts do not always come because something is wrong. Sometimes they come precisely because the connection is becoming meaningful. A great deal of this fear can begin in childhood. Gemini often grows up in emotionally unpredictable environments, where one day there is affection, the next day there is tension, criticism, or emotional absence. They learn to adapt quickly, talk cleverly, read the room, stay interesting, stay flexible. But they do not always learn how to stay still inside. Real emotional safety. When tenderness begins to deepen in adulthood, it may feel unfamiliar to their nervous system. Instead of relaxing into it, they become restless. They text less. They joke more. They become colder, distracted, inconsistent. They may even erase messages because seeing the emotional evidence frightens them. Previous relationships can make this pattern even sharper. Gemini may have once opened up impulsively, quickly, honestly, only to be laughed at, betrayed, or made to feel childish for loving too freely. After that, they begin protecting themselves with movement. They keep things light, keep things fast, keep things slightly undefined. The moment someone starts reaching the more fragile layer beneath their cleverness, Gemini may run. Not because the feelings are false, but because they no longer know how to survive them. What hurts the most about Gemini is that they can vanish while still thinking about you constantly. They can ignore you while rereading old conversations in their head. They can act distant while secretly feeling the entire relationship inside them like static electricity. Gemini often fears that if they fully surrender to love, they will lose their lightness, their spontaneity, their ability to reinvent themselves. But real love does not destroy who Gemini is. It only asks them to stop hiding behind movement and let someone see the quieter truth beneath the sparkling surface. Until they learn that intimacy is not the death of freedom, Gemini may keep disappearing from the very people who touch their heart the deepest. 5. Capricorn. Capricorn does not disappear in obvious ways. They do it with dignity, restraint, and a kind of coldness that makes you wonder whether you imagined the tenderness at all. This is one of the most emotionally controlled signs in the zodiac, and that is exactly why real intimacy can terrify them. Capricorn is not usually afraid of commitment in the childish sense. They are afraid of emotional exposure. They are afraid of needing someone so much that their carefully built inner structure begins to crack. When a relationship is casual, they may feel calm, measured, even surprisingly attentive. But when the bond becomes warm, deep, and full of genuine feeling, Capricorn may suddenly step back as if love itself has become dangerous. Why? Because Capricorn often associate vulnerability with weakness, loss, or humiliation. This sign commonly grows up too fast. Many Capricorns come from childhoods where they had to be strong, useful, mature, responsible, or emotionally self-contained. They may have watched parents suffer in love, sacrifice themselves, endure betrayal, or stay in relationships that slowly broke their spirit. Some Capricorns learn very early that feelings do not save you, control does. Achievement does. Endurance does. As adults, they carry this lesson into romance. They may want love deeply, but the moment it begins to soften them, they feel exposed in a way they cannot tolerate. Capricorn's fear of intimacy is often hidden behind practicality. They will suddenly become focused on work, future plans, finances, fatigue, responsibilities. They will not always say, "I'm scared of how much I feel." Instead, they will say, "I have too much going on right now." They will delay the conversation, cool the tone, respond less, create distance slowly and almost politely. But underneath that discipline is often a heart in full panic. Because once Capricorn starts loving for real, they do not do it halfway, and that intensity frightens them. Past relationships leave deep marks on Capricorn because they do not forget the pain of misplaced trust. If they once invested in someone who was unstable, unreliable, manipulative, or emotionally immature, they may become even more guarded afterward. Capricorn cannot bear the feeling of losing control over their own heart. They hate looking foolish in love. They hate the possibility that their private tenderness could be mishandled. So when a relationship begins to matter too much, they sometimes protect themselves by withdrawing before you can see just how serious their feelings have become. The tragedy of Capricorn is that they often crave the very softness they resist. They want loyalty, safety, devotion, deep partnership, and the kind of love that lasts through years. But when they are finally close to receiving it, the old inner voice says, "Be careful." This is how people lose themselves, until Capricorn learns that true intimacy does not weaken them but gives their strength somewhere meaningful to rest. They may continue disappearing behind silence and responsibility while their heart remains painfully full. 6. Scorpio. Scorpio may be the most intense example of all. This is a sign that can feel love with frightening depth, but that very depth is what makes intimacy so dangerous for them. Scorpio does not fear shallow attraction. Scorpio fears what happens when someone reaches the part of them they cannot easily control. At first, they can be magnetic, hypnotic, deeply attentive, emotionally consuming. They make you feel seen in a way that is almost unnerving. Their presence can be intimate long before the relationship has even defined itself. But when real tenderness begins to replace mystery, when trust appears, when attachment becomes visible, when the possibility of true emotional surrender emerges, Scorpio may become colder than anyone expected. This is because Scorpio does not enter love lightly. Even when they pretend to be calm, they feel everything in extremes. And once the feelings become real, an ancient fear rises inside them: the fear of betrayal, the fear of abandonment, the fear of being emotionally destroyed from the inside. Scorpio is one of the signs most marked by memory. They remember heartbreak not just in the mind, but in the body. If they have ever been lied to, cheated on, emotionally manipulated, or replaced, they may carry that wound for years under a face that looks calm and unreadable. The next time love begins to feel real, they may disappear before history gets the chance to repeat itself. Childhood often explains even more. Many Scorpios grow up around heavy emotional atmospheres: secrecy, betrayal, power struggles, silent suffering, unspoken pain. They may witness love as something intense but dangerous, passionate but destructive. They learn that closeness can turn into control, that devotion can turn into humiliation, that trust can be used against you. So when they meet someone who genuinely reaches their heart, Scorpio experiences not only desire, but alarm. Their soul wants to merge. Their instincts want to survive. That contradiction creates some of the most confusing behavior in love. Scorpio is one of the signs most likely to suddenly ignore, block, erase, or disappear while still feeling everything. They may delete the correspondence because the emotional evidence overwhelms them. They may go cold because warmth makes them too transparent. They may become distant because once they admit the bond matters, they know how devastating it would be to lose it. For Scorpio, emotional closeness is never casual. That is why it can trigger such extreme retreat. There is also a deep struggle with control. Scorpio wants to feel safe before surrendering, but real intimacy requires surrender before total certainty is possible. That uncertainty is almost unbearable for them. They want guarantees no one can honestly give. They want proof that they will not be betrayed, abandoned, or emotionally exposed in vain. And when they cannot get that proof, they sometimes choose disappearance over vulnerability. What makes Scorpio heartbreaking is that they often run not from weak feelings, but from overwhelming ones. The more they love, the more exposed they feel. The more exposed they feel, the more fiercely they may protect themselves. Yet beneath that cold retreat is often a soul longing for a love so loyal, so truthful, and so deep that it can finally quiet their inner war. When Scorpio learns that not every closeness ends in destruction, they become one of the most powerful, devoted, and transformative lovers in the entire zodiac. But until then, they may keep vanishing at the exact moment the relationship becomes warm enough to save them.
Look at you. You are wonderful. Believe in yourself. Believe in stars, and stars will believe in you.